Oh, hi everyone, it's Pete here from the Pain Toolkit, and welcome to the first of hopefully many Pain Toolkit conversations. And boy, oh boy, are we starting off with a bang. We've got some really hot people on the conversations tonight, and everybody's going to introduce themselves shortly. But I just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in. This is so it's a recording, but you might want to. There's going to be a lot of messages going on here tonight, so it's just not one. Just watch it and that's it. You may want to keep revisiting because there's a lot of information, useful information that can help you with the subject tonight, which is about self-management and self-management. Is so important, and a lot of the presenters are going to give their interpretation of what it means, etc. And for me, self-management sort of came around for me in the early 2000s when I joined the expert patients program, and the program we was attached to it's called the self-management program. But before then, I was knew it as the self-care, just and stuff like that. But to me, self-management, as I remember reading a paper years ago. It was from a lady called Debbie Kralik, I think, from Australia, and she said in this little paper, she said that self-management is about taking action, and I really like that because it's about taking action. Anyway, that's just me. Listen, let's introduce everyone. Listen, and I'm going to be one of the facilitators tonight, and I got my good buddy over there in Canada, Keith Meldrum, who's going to be another facilitator. So, Keith, if I just sort of ask you to introduce yourself, and then we'll go around the screen and bring everybody else in.
Absolutely. We want to leave all the time to the experts we've assembled with us today. So, as you said, my name's Keith Meldrum. I'm from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, away on the west coast of North America. Like pain. Oh, that's on my head. Like Pete, I'm also a person that lives with pain, as are some of our presenters here today. And like Pete said, we've got an opportunity here to speak to what we believe are some of the best in the work that they do in this area of really what does it mean. And so we're going to have these really, I think, engaging and exciting conversations about really what does it mean. So looking forward to where the conversations take us, and really excited to be part of this.
Thanks, Keith. So let's go around. So we'll go over to Amy. Amy, do you want to just sort of introduce where you come from, a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Thanks again for inviting me. I'm so excited for today's conversation. My name is Amy Eicher, and I am a chronic pain coach in Normal, Illinois in the USA. And no, I am not kidding. The name of my community is actually Normal. I came to chronic pain coaching via my own 20-year journey with chronic pain. Learned all of the papers and tools and things that we'll be talking about today, mostly by accident, and then found out they had names. And that's pretty cool. But my mission in life is just to help people live the best life that they can around whatever circumstances that they're in. And I have recently been blessed with long COVID, so I am once again using all the tools that I teach to manage my long COVID, which is much better than it was when we talked last time. So, yay.
Good.
Thanks very much, Amy. Virginia, can you introduce yourself?
Well, certainly, and I thank you for being here. This is going to be a great conversation this evening. Well, I'm from Canada. I'm from the opposite end of from Canada as Keith is. I'm from Nova Scotia, a beautiful, nice province. So I come to the table. I live with pain, and I'm also the president of the People Pain Network. And what we do is we support people through who live with pain through peer support. So we embrace the Pain Toolkit and the Steps to the Brain Toolkit. And this is what we share with our people in our support groups. And this is what our peer leaders use to help people move forward with their pain. So this is going to be great. Thanks.
Thanks very much. We'll go around the screen. Toby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Pete. Hi, everybody. Yes, Toby Newton-John. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I think I was at ground zero when Pete did his pain management program back at Input in London some time back, Pete, wasn't it?
96.
And so I've stayed in the pain field, and I'm now professor of psychology at the University of Technology in Sydney in Australia. And I think this, yeah, the sort of a forum like we're doing here is such a great opportunity to share ideas and maybe frame up some useful things for folks managing pain going forward. So really pleased to be here, even though it's very early in the morning. Very pleased to be here.
And to put that bit in, right?
And last but not least, Bronnie Thompson. Bronnie,
Hi, I'm Bronnie. I'm at the bottom of the world, so I live in Christchurch, New Zealand. I live with fibromyalgia, have done for a long time, but didn't come into my clinical work through my pain. I just was fascinated by pain and its effect on people going back to work. So now I am postgraduate academic lead for our postgrad programs in pain and pain management at the University of Otago. And we're proud to be able to present self-management all the way through our program. It's woven throughout. And yeah, I have no idea where we're going to go to with our conversations. Wherever we go, it will be interesting. What a lovely, diverse bunch of people. And isn't that cool? Thanks so much for organising it, guys.
Thank you.
I know where we're going. I'll tell you where we're actually going to start off with you, Bronnie, because
Oh dear.
because I think you flagged that well, because we all, as Keith said, that self-management is quite widely used around the world, etc. And even the new term supported self-management has sort of come on stream the last few years, etc. But I think it's such an important thing for people, living with pain. Well, self-management is for people living with pain, but also long-term conditions, etc. But what does it mean to people? And I do. I think us working in this field, we feel comfortable. We know what it means. But sometimes when I do talk to people, I say to them, do you self-manage? And they look at me like, what's that? And I forget that it's not a term used on a regular basis, like as people say, getting on with it and coping and all this sort of business, like So Bronnie, do you want to kick us off, and then we'll sort of flitter around, Hey, listen,
From there.
There's no hard and fast rules, you have a little chat, and then with someone else can come in, etc. So keep it flowing, etc. As I call it.
Yep.
So over to you, Bronnie.
Thanks. So I don't like using the term, to be quite honest. I know that it's all the things that I do to live my life. It's all the time in between seeing somebody who's a so-called expert, all the things I have to do or need to do or want to do in between those sort of professional sessions. And my work clinically is to help people find ways to do what matters in their life. And that means using a whole bunch of tools. And my view is that people are self-management is almost an icky term, because we're not often, yes, we're talking about what we do as individuals, but we are not on our own. We're embedded within a network of family, of healthcare systems, of life, of friends, and so when we think about self-management, it can sometimes feel like, oh, here you go, person, dump, here's your job. And we forget, as clinicians perhaps, that that it's a very complicated set of decisions that we as people need to make every day, all the time. That's what self-management means to me. It's those decisions that I make in the context of my life with the people around me that can support me or not, depending on what I'm doing. So I still find it a bit of a vexed term. I think sometimes it's about putting the onus on the person with pain without sometimes recognizing that it's not always about what that person chooses to do, but that the systems in which they are living can constrain how much or what choices that person has. So if you have good health literacy, you're a stroppy woman like me, you might find different affordances, different things that you can do. Whereas a lot of the people that I've worked with, English is a second language. They don't like our health system. It feels foreign. They don't feel okay to ask questions and to push into, and if we say self-management to somebody who's already vulnerable, that's a pretty disempowering situation to be in. So that's why I quite like the idea of supported self-management. And I'm struggling to find another term that might do it better, because it's not, because if we just say self-management, it can feel like it's all my job and there's nothing there to help me. And I don't think that's fair. Sorry, went off tangent, but that's okay.
No, it was awesome. Yeah. Anybody else want to
I think
jump in? And
yeah, well, I think that kind of opens the door. You talk about supportive self-management, what the healthcare system can do to help us. I mean, I live with pain, and of course, I've got help from different teams, my pain doctor, massage, occupational therapist, and they've come in and out of my team over time, and it has changed. But I think as we say supportive, it opens the door that we can ask for help. We can say, I need help doing this. And maybe it makes it realize it's okay to, because I think we go through our lives not asking for help and not asking for support with things. And just if we could put that word supported, or like you say, a different term in there, it opens us our doors to, it's okay to get that help and get what we need in order to manage and live with this.
I think for me, I talk with my folks, and I'm pardon the colloquialisms that come out of me, but I don't like to call them patients, because they're not, and they're not really clients. They're just my folks, and we talk about living your best life, and what do you need to do that. And I talk a lot about box checking, that there are so especially as a woman in today's world, there are a lot of boxes that we are supposed to check, things that we're supposed to do because we're women of a certain age, or we have kids, or we're single, or we're working. And there's this prescribed list of unspoken societal expectations that we're supposed to meet. And things that we do to manage our pain and chronic illnesses can often become like that they're things that we're supposed to do, yet they bring no value, they bring no help. They actually contribute in a negative way, because we continue to do these things without help, be they exercises or chanting mantras or going to yoga class. It doesn't, the box doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's done out of obligation.
Yeah.
And because somebody told them they had to. And so that's why I don't even talk about management. I just talk about living. How are you going to live your best life? What do we need to do to get that done? So I understand that in the context of this conversation, me saying, hey, let's live, is the same thing as saying, hey, let's do self-management that's supported.
Okay. That makes my heart sing, because that language around it just feels clunky, but I understand why we do it. Let's live.
Well, and I will tack on that I think we need to have terms like that within healthcare professional conversations, because that sounds really weird if we just say living, but the conversation amongst healthcare professionals is often needed to be very different than how we approach those that we're trying to impart freedom to.
Yeah.
And perhaps, look, just to round out this first sort of idea, I just want to pick up on Pete's point about that initial idea of self-management. It's something to do with taking action. Because it to me, there's lots of folks who live with pain, but the idea that it isn't something you just respond to, but something you take action proactively for is kind of a critical and missing element. And so that sort of merges into the idea of just suffering or just putting up with, as opposed to taking a more of a proactive or seeing yourself as the agent of change, rather than it will do its own thing by itself, or someone will provide something. It's where you're, I think, so that feels also what that self-management idea. However, ineffectively, sometimes that idea gets across to people, or people perhaps don't take that on board as being something which does encompass support from a variety of sources. Because I think Keith's point earlier on about self-management can sound like a kind of an abandonment from health services, and in some ways it probably is meant to be that, where clinics are full, hospitals are full, go and self-manage, not because that's clinically a valuable thing, but because we've got no space, or we don't know what else to do with all the other frustrations that we know about. I guess that idea that self-management encompasses something about the person living their best life it will require them to sort of engage gears themselves in various forms, so many different forms actually, and perhaps engaging the gear is to not keep going to different places, and to so there's multiple, but some of that about that proactivity and the agency of the term self-management, how it is sort of, it seems important.
It's like Pete says, who's in the driving seat? Who's deciding the direction, and who's changing the gears, and who's turning the ignition on? It's got to be the person. And I think often, especially in the early parts of learning to live with pain, people are finding that they're not in the driver's seat. Somebody else, they're waiting on an appointment to come up, or a scan to be done, or a piece of medication, some kind of medication to do the job. And when we're talking about what living with pain, like Amy, I think it's about that. What does your life, what do you want your life to look like? And how can I help you get there? And what skills? I was listening to Kevin Vowles talking just recently, looking at it's an ACT course, and he talks about the difference between pain management and pain rehabilitation. And I actually really like the term pain rehabilitation, because it is about what the skills, the rehab that I need to do till I get to the point where I can do this myself. It's a rehabilitation process, and we never talk about that. We talk about management, and it's kind of contained and stuff, but it's a process, and people have different needs at different points, and they're ready for different things at different points. And even when somebody's still hoping that there's a thing that's going to take it all away, we can still start doing that rehabilitation process and helping the person make their own choices about what matters to them. Is it pain reduction? Is it I want to be able to play on the ground with my kids? Is it I want to go for a walk? Can I have some rest? Can I go to work? All of those things direct where that rehabilitation focus might go to. Might conjure up some
I
other
like that
things too.
rehabilitation.
Do you? Oh, I'm glad to see you.
I kind of do. You know why? Because when you talk about people going to rehabilitation, you talk about them going in somewhere and learning tools. When you talk about self-management, you talk about, like Keith said, oh, here goes self-management. And it could be that thought that you're just being, like I said, pushed out the door. You talk about rehabilitation. You're going in, someone's going to teach you how to move forward and work with you. And because if you don't learn what pacing is, like, as I searched for answers, I remember someone asked me at the conference, would you have done that again? I'm like, well, yeah. I wanted to figure out what the heck was going on. So until you get some knowledge behind you about what pacing is and what the self-management is and what chronic pain is, I mean, nobody even knows that. So I kind of like that.
Virginia, I'm going to bounce off of that and say I think that, if I had my druthers and could, encourage all of the healthcare professionals from, where I am to where you all are, I would say, can we start at least directing these patients to education somewhere? There's infinite at this point, it seems, free information on the internet from good, solid providers.
Yeah.
That you can point people to. And it does, I think it starts with education too. I understand that's my bias. Like I mean, I'm willing to say I'm biased and y'all can call me out, but if we
All
don't,
biased.
we don't understand that the pain isn't actually damage in most of these cases. Like that was the turning point for me when I recognized that, wait a minute, you mean I'm not like constantly damaging my spine and my pelvis? Huh?
Yeah.
Well,
It's almost too much now, don't you think? I mean, it's overwhelming for people in terms of where to go and what's credible and what's not. And so I think there's still definitely that role of sort of curating that for folks to help them, because sometimes I think people just think, oh, there's too much there. They're all kind of singing from the same hymn book without any kind of credibility check behind. And I think there is a role for us to play. But yeah, I must say I would certainly endorse that as a starting point for any condition, whether you're diabetic or you've got asthma, or, starting point for everything.
Knowledge is power, right? Yeah.
I got a question for the brain hive here, and it's going to pick up on something you said earlier, Virginia. So Amy, I agree with you. Like, education is fundamental, and one of the things that Pete and I and many of Amy, you and I have talked about, in Virginia, all of us, we've talked about, is that education, like getting this, forefront in medical schools and healthcare providers about all the things that we just talked about. But as we're transitioning to that, you said something that twigged me, Virginia. You said supported self-management sort of gives you that okay to say, oh, I can ask for help. So understanding that people shouldn't be in that position, but that's where we sit right now. Why is it, do we think that people, because what ultimately we're trying to get people to a position of a greater locus of control or agency or whatever we want to call it, but they're afraid to ask for help. Why are people afraid? Why do they feel like the system doesn't make it easy for them, but why do we feel like it's challenging or difficult to ask for that help, Virginia? I thought that was a really interesting point.
Do you think it's a culture? Do you think, when you go into your doctor's office, you got 10 minutes, you got to get an out, so you shouldn't ask, or, as us, and I think I go on something what Amy said, being the female in the family, I run the household. So how do I ask my family to help me out? How do I say, I can't do supper tonight alone, or I can't do the things that I used to do, or, it's very humbling to say, gosh, can you carry the groceries in for me? Or gosh, I can't do this, or could you teach me, this? So I think it goes back to maybe upbringing, culture, and that constant, you don't want to take too much of your physician's time.
Isn't it interesting? We talk about it as culture, but it's global. I see the same situation here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so I've been looking at Māori and the way that our Māori population have inequitable access to healthcare. Their health outcomes are poorer, and at least part of that comes from this foreign health system that doesn't actually treat people as humans. We're a body part. And there's this whole sense that if it's foreign and my whānau, my family, are the unit, and that as an individual I'm not as important as my whānau, then what a Māori woman is likely to do is to hide that pain and soldier on, because that's what we often do. And I guess part of the fear is that people will look at a person and say, well, you look fine, what's wrong with you? And put it to a personal failing of character, of morals, of you're just lazy, or, and I think that can fit into the fear to ask for help when it's such an invisible, misunderstood experience that we go through. It just is. Maybe that's part a human thing. I don't know. Toby, what are your thoughts? What happens in?
I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Because I think what we're talking to people over the years, seems the healthcare system is pretty much set up for, you know, firefighting, really. Like, you know, there's you know, when the person's really in problem, you know, really screwed up, then it's sort of then the health system kicks in. I've always been a drummer. I've been always banging on for a number of years now. It's about, would it be useful if we taught supported self-management within schools?
Yeah.
And I've got this. It sort of sounds back. I was at a meeting in it was a mini conference up in Norfolk a few years ago, and a lady, one of the presenters there, I can't remember her second name, Kath. She's quite robust on Twitter and stuff, like Kath Evans, I think. And she gave a presentation. She asked the audience, how did the recycling revolution start? And I'm thinking, I don't know. And everybody else was sort of thinking, well, she said it started off in schools, like, you know, because the kids in school were learning about recycling. They then went home and taught the parents and siblings and the like, you know. And I was sitting there thinking, why don't we do that with you know, with long-term health conditions, pain on long-term conditions? Because the chances are, you know, when younger people, they're going to get trapped in a medical model. They're going to perhaps grow up with a long-term health problem, or get a health problem when in teenage years, or 20s, 30s, and 40s and whatnot. So it's like we're teaching them about how to count and write and whatnot. But I think learning supported self-management while in school, that's a lifelong skill that they can, again, when they're in school, go home and teach the parents and their siblings. But there's lifelong skills that they can tap into if they get into problems as they get older. I mean, what's your guys' take on that?
I think you're sort of tapping into the whole way that society thinks about pain and the issue that we're all having, that, you know, society sees pain as it's the one and the same thing, and there's no acute chronic, it's all the same, and you treat chronic pain the same way as you treat acute, and that's a big part of the systemic problem that we have, isn't it? It's a basic misunderstanding about, so as Amy mentioned. So the idea that perhaps you could teach kids, you know, that there are differences in pain, and that the longer, you know, and the value that I mean, it's kind of exciting to think about. Imagine if the next cohort of kids grew up with a sense of the way that pain isn't just the same thing. It changes the way to best live with it changes. That would be an extraordinary societal thing to happen, because that would then change people's interactions with healthcare providers. It would change people's expectations about how they manage themselves. Yeah, well, that's a very novel idea.
Even, you know, if we think about headaches and the communal garden tension headache, if kids learned, when you have a headache, you don't have to reach for a pill. You can go lie down, go for a walk on the beach, play, do something that's about self-care, do some mindfulness. And I know that schools are teaching some of these sub-skills like mindfulness, like exercise and play and stuff, but I don't know that they're pulling it together as this is actually a lifestyle. This is lifestyle stuff that we're doing in pain management. The big difference between pain management, pain self-management, and other forms is that distinction between hurt and harm. You know, that and for me, that was the big turning point for me, when Mike Butler gave me the lecture, There's Nothing We Can Do For You, and then the book, you know, The Challenge of Pain by Malzak and Wall. And the biggest thing for me to learn then was that my pain wasn't about tissue damage. We could get a bit more sophisticated around our conversations as little kids, because of course most people are going to have that acute pain experience. We're going to do something, we see the injury, we get some pain, and then it fades, and that's normal. It's just people quite commonly have these pains that aren't. But headache's that mystery. We know that it's not about an injury. We don't talk about head injury when I've got a headache, but we can often hear people talk about a back injury when it's probably a backache. So even just some subtle things around, if we use headache as an example, or tummy ache as an example, how can what's a healthy way to handle that without reaching for a diagnosis or a pill? That would be cool.
There's our next revolution right there. Right there it is.
Yeah, the thing is that it's not saying you shouldn't do. I think there's a really strong place for biomedical models. I think they've offered us a huge amount. What they are is incomplete. And so let's add to that. And this is one of my biggest arguments online is, when I talk about the non-medical components, that people seem to think that I'm saying, well, and the bio is irrelevant. It's not at all. It's just that we add these other important parts on, and we get a bigger picture of what might be helping this person. So if we taught kids, yes, that bio bit, maybe you need some more water because you're just dehydrated. Maybe you haven't had, maybe you're a bit tired because you went to bed too late. All of that sort of stuff. But we're adding in and how you're feeling about that, and how can you calm your body down, and what do you need to live really well, even though you've got this headache. It's just, you just switch that focus.
I love, sorry, Amy, I just wanted to say, I loved your idea, Toby, of getting in front of kids that fundamental misunderstanding or differential between acute and chronic pain. I mean, as a kid, I broke lots of stuff because I was a stupid kid. So I had lots of pain, but it always went away. And so you could never have this concept growing up that pain can go on forever. And when they told me you could live with pain forever at whatever I was, 18 or 19, I went back to my 12-year-old self when I broke collarbone. I was like, but that pain went away. Meanwhile, my collarbone's still all screwed up, but that pain went away. So to be able to explain to them there's this and that, I love it. Sorry, Amy.
Well,
that'd be cool.
You actually helped me out there. The first thought was that in 2019, I was at a conference that Adrian Lau held, and I believe he is actually doing some research on educating children, and it's a long-term study, seeing if that makes a difference, how they handle things. I don't know where the funding for that is right now, so it may be, but I thought it was a fantastic idea that they were going into classrooms and teaching children the difference that we're talking about now. What I started to say was to tag on to Bronnie, which is what I heard you say is that we're, your experience, my experience, when I heard Virginia talk, her experience was we stopped catastrophizing when we got education. Because of exactly what Keith said, all of the pain we had up until we started to experience chronic symptoms was that pain goes away, the pill makes it go away, the doctor or nurse or mom or dad or special adult makes it go away. And now none of those things are working, so this has got to be super scary.
And I'd like to take that word catastrophizing, give it a new label,
because it's a
negative word, especially the word catastrophization, which is I just dislike that one intensely. But think about when people have a misunderstanding of what's going on, which is common and normal, and we shouldn't think people are weird because they have this misunderstanding, that there is, why would everyday person know that there is a difference between acute and chronic pain? Why would you? So when I hear catastrophizing as a term being used, it's almost like a blame. You're exaggerating. You've got this magnification going on. But it's actually, why wouldn't you? And it takes that sense away from judging and then giving some more information. Sometimes information alone doesn't do the trick. And I tend to not want to give people an info dump. I like people to experience something, because experiential learning is so much more powerful. So learning to be okay with what happens, and then observing when you do something, observing what happens, what's the effect of that, is really, really important. And yet we still have to have this, and we do have to have some kind of knowledge that there is a difference between being sore and doing damage. That's the fundamental part. So can we change catastrophizing? There's some good research on that. Good new paper just published on that.
I was going to say, I just call it the logical conclusion of your experiences.
Yeah. And I call it freaking out, because you do. Why wouldn't you?
Right. That would be normal based on your past experiences and what's happening now.
Yeah. And take away the sense that it's a deliberate strategy. I mean, we get technical. Probably there are some functional outcomes from catastrophizing. If we think about people who freak out and then they're communicating that to others, the purpose of that, the function of that, is to say, help me, this is weird, I'm not coping. So we go back to that idea of how can we ask for help in a way that is much more honoring my autonomy as a person and being straight up about it, instead of having to use this catastrophizing approach. How can we help people feel okay to say, oh, I don't understand what's going on, and not to feel belittled or that they're coming across as super worried and therefore there's something psychopathological about them. I get very frustrated with the sense that people with pain get blamed for being distressed when they're in the middle of an experience that is so weird, so out of our normal. You know, it's distressing, and why wouldn't it be? So part of getting that control back is by understanding that, yes, this is distressing, and we can have some moments to feel shitty. And then we can start to say, once that shittiness fades, what can I do? It's a different way of viewing healthcare, isn't it? It's not the box and burn, the fix and forget.
Toby, can I ask you, I mean, this catastrophizing, so you know, I think it came up, I think last year or the year before. I know Beth Darnell was pushing back on it. Personally, I haven't got a problem with it, because I think I used to do that. I used to catastrophize. I remember I was doing a back awareness day down in Essex, in South Essex, and Carol, the pain nurse, she said, "How are you, Pete?" I said, "Oh, I feel like someone's feels like someone's drilling a hole in my hip." And she said to me, "Well, when's the last time someone done that?" And it's like the light bulb going on that. But it's my way of I didn't know how to describe what was going on, so that's me describing what it probably what it did feel like, you know. So and I know people do it. I mean, when I'm talking to people via email or other means, like, you know, I know they do it because perhaps it's not in their vocabulary to you know, to describe their pain areas, etc. You know, it's killing me and stuff like that. But I don't think it's a term that you used at Input years ago, was it? I don't think catastrophizing.
No, I think it's actually come out of the depression literature, and I mean, it didn't start in pain. It's a concept. It's been around for a long time in other literatures, and it's kind of, I think, you know, the points everyone's making, I personally agree completely with. It's got you know, on the plus side, it has a currency now, and we all know what it is, and that's part of the thing about healthcare, isn't it? We all sort of talking a common language, so we all understand, but it is a dismissive term. I think that's a fair point about, you know, you're just catastrophizing. Is a way of sort of putting down somebody's experience, or trivializing it, or
just pull yourself together, man. You're catastrophizing, is the feel. Yeah.
It's silly, or being stupid, or you as opposed to you're trying to describe what your experience is. But I mean, it takes off another topic, but that idea, Pete, of we've done some research looking at the use of metaphor to explain pain, to explain chronic pain, and it's been a really interesting journey in that that's all we've got is language, and the way to convey your experience is not always the most helpful thing when it comes to people's response to you, because if you if you choose the elaborate, flowery, dramatic language that best describes what you're feeling, that can come across to healthcare provider as you're catastrophizing, and they're going to try and shut you down and move you on. So it's a tricky balance to strike, isn't it? With there's a wonderful paper, Pete, by Charles Pyther, who was the medical director at Input back in the day. You know, we talk about abnormal illness behavior has been in the literature for a long time, and he talked about abnormal prescribing behavior, and the idea like it's the doctors who are abnormal in how they're responding to people with chronic pain. It's not the patient's illness behavior which is abnormal, which is a really nice spin on the whole thing. But sorry, Amy, I thought you were gonna say something.
No, I mean, that was fantastic. You've got me thinking about the doctors being the ones with the wrong response, and I'm kind of giggling inside. So
I've always wondered about that. You know, when we're doing research, there's heaps of research about people with pain and rather less about the dynamic between a health professional and the person with pain. What if you have a really stroppy person like me meeting a health professional who feels vulnerable and not very capable in this area of pain management, and we know that exists, and I'm somebody who says, I want, you know, send me for the scan. That dynamic between somebody who's not very confident as a clinician and a patient who's got very strong beliefs is going to end in disaster often. What if you instead have somebody who's a very vulnerable patient with a very knowledgeable health professional of any kind, and together they meet, and that dynamic becomes a really productive one? What if you have a really well-informed, stroppy person and a really caring and knowledgeable clinician? Then you've got the dynamic for something absolutely wonderful. But at the moment, our research focuses either on the person with pain and all their flaws, or the health professional's attitudes and beliefs. But we don't look at that dynamic. And I suspect a lot of the issues that I've seen, certainly in our service here in Christchurch, when I was looking at referral patterns, we get referrals from particular health professionals, and we wouldn't from others, or we get referrals from health professionals that would give us that sinking feeling as we'd see the list of prescriptions hugely. So when we're thinking about supported self-management, we're looking really at that dynamic between somebody who has a purpose in life, wants to live their own life, and wants the tools to be able to do that. And we want a clinician who's prepared to stand there and wave the flag for that person, advocate, find stuff out for them, so that we become a proper partnership. But not just doesn't have to be a doctor, it can be anybody. We've got coaches, we've got OTs, we've got some wonderful massage therapists who are doing health coaching, pain coaching. You know, that's what we're really looking for ultimately, as people living with pain, I think. So you've got a choice about who helps you. And when you get those two together, what a powerful combination.
Is that, are you describing, I know I don't, utopia? Because I talk to, I mean, the health system here we're under, I mean, that's the ideal scenario, I guess, you know. But I was sitting there thinking, that the state we're in, I know I'm not saying it's just here in the UK. I think probably around other health systems are struggling as well. But people can't even get they're having to wait sometimes 2 or 3 weeks to get a GP appointment.
Yep, happens
So
here as well.
That's going to piss them
I think this is where what we're doing and the way that we put information out on social media is a really powerful way of helping to turn the tide. I know in academic circles, my blog is worthless. Nobody cares. But I've had nearly 2 million hits on my blog since I started. That's a lot of people. And I write about my interpretation of stuff that I read and problems that I'm thinking about. I know Amy, Pete, Keith, Janea, we all put stuff out there on social media, and that, I think, starts to demonstrate it is part of that zeitgeist. We didn't have that a few years back. So what we can't, I don't think we're going to get a health system that's perfect, and we are struggling here in New Zealand. It takes several weeks to get to a GP appointment unless it's an acute situation, and our hospital is bulging, and the focus, even for our Burwood pain service, is on quick fix, because that's what the hospital bean counters are looking for. But pain management, pain rehabilitation is not a quick fix. It's a slow, it's not sexy. It does, we don't have an app that does it. So what we have to rely on is what we do to help start to put like salt in the stew. We're adding bits of salt around the world to say there is a different way. And I think that's probably got more traction and more power with people who live with pain than anything that an organised system might do, at least in terms of attitudinal shift. That's my hope. At least people seem to be reading my blog, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. I would just add to, like you said, Pete, what Bronnie described as this real sort of, utopia. And I'll just share an experience that I had. And I think we are see a little bit of change. A few weeks ago, I was asked to present at a pain education forum, mostly for healthcare providers in Vancouver. And for those of you who know me, and Toby, you may not know this, but I'm a neuromodulation patient. I have two stimmulators, one is a backup and one new one in me. And one of my primary pain physicians from the neuromodulation clinic, he's younger, so I think that's part of it. And I was part of the planning committee for this conference as well, and he was presenting, and he said, Keith, why don't you and I present together? We'll get on stage, I will present, we'll talk about sort of healthcare, and in specific about neuromodulation, he would talk about that as a possible tool, right patient, right pain, all that kind of stuff. And then I could talk about it from the lived experience. And that is the first time in 37 years I had a healthcare provider say, join me as an equal in front of my peers as a healthcare provider and a physician, and let's educate together. And it was unbelievable. So, Pete, maybe it's happening, but in like dribs.
Well, from the time I've been involved with this, it's a pretty like technology is this is how things are changing. Pretty like Captain Kirk stuff, really. Well, I get invited to present at the it's finished now, the EFIC pain school in Austria in September, and then they like what I was doing there, and then they invite me to the Austrian schools, and they do treat me like an equal, really, like the doctors who organise it and stuff like that. So it is, it is changing.
Yeah.
I've always got the hurry ups,
Yeah, the hurry ups, yeah.
It's
right.
moving, yeah, but it's like the old saying, God give me patience, or bloody hurry up about it.
But even
Pain
Pain Society meetings, Pete, we've had, and we still do have, people who live with pain as presenters. But what I want now is for those presenters not to be tagged on to the last day, but to be actually upfront and straight, or when we were in Boston and people living with pain were, way off down, couldn't find it. It took you half an hour to get there. So I think that is changing. I think part of the shift that we need to do is to help research types understand that lived experience or living experience is valid itself. I understand, I'm a researcher, I love research, and yet what we say is people who live with pain has power and authenticity that, yes, a piece of research will tell us some stuff, but what we are experiencing is our lived experience. That is going to help people in the audience hear what it is like. There is something about that resonance. And if we can, as Keith had, have a clinician with someone living with pain join us on stage, that is really important. It starts to say, I keep coming back to nothing about us without us.
Mhm.
That's an old meme from what, the late 70s, early
70s,
80s
yeah.
days. Yeah. Why is that only just happening in pain now?
Well,
Really?
Bronnie, I think to be fair, in a lot of grants, research grants these days are requiring a consumer voice, and we can debate whether that's the right term as well. But I think it's certainly happening. I think that at least at the research level, the idea that if you're researching clinical areas, you've got to have the perspective of the people who are living with these conditions as part of what questions are you asking and how are you assessing success and all those things.
Yeah.
You know, you and I are on a grant together, which is a consumer-led grant.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I actually want to come to that in a tick. So I think it's changing, which is good. But I'm also just wanting to get people's views on just back to this idea of self-management and supported self-management. And part of what this grant is about is about the sort of peer-led self-managed support that's offered. And our conversation so far has all been about healthcare provided support, and I'm wanting to propose that's still part of our thinking, is that the support comes from the so-called experts, whereas the resources that are out there, which are you guys and so many others, it feels to me personally like that's where the movement really should sit, is harnessing your experiences, your knowledges, and your expertise to provide that support for multiple reasons, but not the least of which is that there's a credibility that comes, of course, from, like as Keith's example, you know, for those physicians in training or physicians who are there, to see you speak about your experience and for that to be, it's experiential learning for them in seeing you and describe, that's way more powerful than the slides and the overheads and the, you know, the talk out. You know, it's just, I guess, hands down, very different experience. They will remember you and what you spoke about way longer than they'll ever retain, you know, some data from a few papers on spinal cord stimulation. You know, that
Right.
So it feels to me like this is where we should be putting our energies next. And that's that.
I mean, this is. I'm sorry, cutting in there, but you know, we talked briefly, and you was telling me about your new project, our recovery. I mean, what you're talking about to me is. Would you like to sort of tell everybody about what you're doing there? Because to me, I think it's a fantastic concept.
Yeah. Well, just it's a support program for people with pain, with chronic pain, delivered by lived experience folks through an online portal, and it's running on the AA model, actually, the Alcoholics Anonymous model of not giving advice, not giving direction, not telling people what to do, not telling people how to live their lives, people having an opportunity to share their experience, and in a supported environment, either take away information or not, but a place where they can go that's reliably safe for them to share what's happening for them, and also to listen. It's you know, it's not just about talking, isn't it? It's also about listening. And there will be resources, and there will be modules, and there'll be the more, I guess, traditional educational elements to it. Because as we said at the beginning, you know, knowledge is power and information is critical. But the crux of it is to provide ongoing support, not time limited, not you get 10 booster sessions and that's it, or you get 1.5 an hour with the doctor. This is an ongoing 7-day opportunity to connect, because your flare-up doesn't not necessarily happen at the time when you're seeing physio, right? By the time you get into the physio, the flare-ups, well, so the idea is it's there and it's available all times for people to move in and out of as they need, and we're, you know, very excited to see how this is gonna roll out.
Super cool to have been involved right from the very beginning, where it's been what does it look like? What can we do? I'm very pleased to be part of this whole project. It's such an important step forward. Thinking beyond, we've all got our own bit that we can contribute, and certainly health professionals can contribute, but ultimately living a life is not, I don't want to live somebody else's life, and I don't want other people to have to live the life that I choose for them. And this approach, I think, allows people to have that autonomy to choose the bits that make sense for them at that time. We don't all want to take this whole big curry full of self-management and swallow it down. Sometimes we just want to have a samosa to start off with, and then we might have some raita, and we'll do that throughout our life. And I think that's what our recovery will give us, that chance to pick up the bits that we want to have at the time that we need it. I really like that. We had it at Burwood, we used to have this idea that you would do your program and then you would go and you never need to come back. And we've been shown, we know that does not work, because the referral rate is high for almost all of our pain management programs, and the programs have to make a decision about how they want to manage that, because otherwise we'll get the same people recycling and nobody new can get in. But the reality is that people are not ready for the whole thing. They're ready for different bits at different times, and that's okay. You know, we agree with that when you're trying to do a diet, or you're learning how to live with diabetes. You can't pick up everything at once, but somehow our rehabilitation approach for pain's been, do this 6-12 week program and you'll be finished at the end of it. Oh, yeah, right.
If I may give a little bit of anecdotal stuff to reinforce what you are all saying. With the long COVID, I moved from a one-on-one focus to more of a group focus, and broke it down into, like, okay, well, this one's going to be information about emotions, and this one's going to be information about, like, how do I get from my PT exercises to, like, going back to the gym, right? And then there's an upcoming one that's just going to be on pacing. Like, what the heck does that mean? And I'm in the second one now, and those that have participated, my big thing is a 6-month program, and it's a group, and all of those people have said, I had no idea the group experience would be this, like, impactful. Like, yeah, you said good stuff and that's great, and, like, thanks for helping, but more important was the group. And in all of the group sessions I've done over the last 3 years, the people in the cohort stay together after the course is over and continue to support each other, with me not like, I go away, I'm like, yeah, I'm here if you need me, if you need information, I'm totally here, but they become self-supported.
Yes.
And
I like that.
I was going to say, and I am thrilled, because that surpassed my wildest expectations of how something like this might work. But these little cohorts of men and women that are supporting each other, 2 years later after they finished their course, it's freaking amazing. And I'm just really excited about it. So I just want the world to know that groups are the way to go.
That's great. What I do is volunteer support groups, and what you said is people come to the of these classes and they're left not knowing what to do or where to move forward. And what we've done with our healthcare system is actually partner with some of the pain clinics in the classes. So not partner, let them, and they provided us space to run these, and then let people know that they are available, because what you get within this group is how to take what you've learned from the healthcare providers and put it into everyday life. How do you come there and you take away that imbalance of power? We're all the same place. We're all the same place, and they share more freely. Yes. And we have people been coming for years. We decide some of the topics, and they decide the topics. Each group has their own uniqueness, and they can decide
where they're at and then what topics they need. And it can be just about anything. And then we have healthcare providers come speak on it and then spend our time. How do we make this work? Does it work? Doesn't it? And it is amazing. And we have a young adults group and hear someone come back saying, now I actually feel good because I can feel like, you're right. The answers are in the room. The answers aren't from us giving it. The answers are in the room. We're helping each other and they feel good about that, actually helping each other. So there's a real role for peer support, a real role. And I think it's not embraced enough and it's not seen as much as it is. But what I'm seeing here, and I've been doing this for 5 years now, it's amazing what people are, the support they're getting.
I absolutely love groups for pain management because, so I've got a little bit of face validity because I can say, oh, well, I live with pain. But actually the people inside the group are the ones that challenge one another far more vigorously. They will pull each other up and say, you can do better than that. Hey, why didn't you do this? And I really love that because it gives people a chance to help another person. When you're feeling vulnerable and you can help somebody else, that boosts your sense of self. And I think that is really cool. We can see that the same answer doesn't work in the same way for each person in that group. And I think that's wonderful. And as a clinician, my job is just to facilitate. I know some stuff. I've worked with lots of people. I've read a lot of stuff, but actually the group does the job and it's harder to make them happen. Like we have to have scheduling and we have to organize stuff, and that's not very easy inside a health system that's relying on half-hour appointments. But when people get together, wow, it's just in a program, the times that were the most important, when the most work got done was morning tea, lunch, and after the program had finished, the end of the day, when people would have a chat with one another and they would be talking about the topics that had been raised during the sessions. That's the time that the learning really happens. Isn't that what we want? These communities of people that support each other. Some of them, I have to say, I've been visiting a couple of groups online on Facebook and of people living with pain, and they're not a very nice place to be if you live well with pain, because somehow those judgments that, well, what, you mean you're not taking any medication? Well, clearly your pain is not as bad as mine because I'm taking this medication and it's not working. I'm not taking meds because it doesn't do anything. But I think that's our growing point for those of us that live with pain, is how do we influence those people who are still at that point of kind of proving that they're bad and that they need help, and without doing that in a way that puts their distress down and doesn't foster them towards going to pursuing, finding things that aren't actually there. I don't know how we do that.
I want to pick up on that, Ronnie, because I had this thought in my head, and that's a perfect segue into that. And this is maybe an unfair question for all of you, but because Pete and I, for facilitating, we get to ask the unfair questions. So we take ourselves back to the hairy, first of all, Toby, your program, it sounds amazing. I just can't, you're going to have to keep us filled in. I just think it sounds incredible. But if we go back to what we know are a lot of people's experiences, I know it was Pete's, I know it was mine, it was probably all of us, where you're alone and you're running around going from doctor to doctor because you're trying to this mess out, this big hairy mess. I want to ask each one of you, for that person, because they still exist, what is the one thing that you would ask? And I'm going to limit you to one thing. What is the one thing that you would ask the healthcare system? And I'm doing the air quotes because the healthcare system is this great big mess. What is the one thing that you would ask them to do or to recognize, or what lever or whatever you want to call it? What would they do? That one thing to help that person stop going around in circles, to know that they can ask for help, Virginia, or they can go to a group or whatever, but because they're caught up in the system and often looking for answers for that system. So what is the one thing that you would suggest healthcare could do to help that person move in that right direction? So I'm going to go around the screen and I'm going to ask each one of you. So, and then Virginia, because you're to the top right for me, I'm going to ask you first.
Okay. The one thing is first be honest with them and just believe that they have the pain and be honest with them that now you have a little pain and believe that, and just which comes into believing that yes, you have chronic pain or persistent pain, whatever you want to, and that's what's going to help them move forward is you believe in them and then start
Right.
validate.
Yep. I love that. Amy.
I'm gonna say ER visits when you come in and the pain is so excruciating and you cannot manage and your doctor's not available and your doctor told you to go to the ER, so you're doing exactly what you were told. And for me, it's not so much about, I mean, the validation would have been nice, but like, don't tell me there's nothing you can do for me, because you can. You can send somebody to talk to me, you can give me a phone number to call, you can tell me that there's programs, you can point me to things on the internet, you like, there are a million things that a very busy ER can do to direct someone in pain to help that isn't in the ER. And while I am a huge proponent that everybody in the world should have a psychologist that they can talk to whenever they need to, maybe when I'm telling you my pain's a 10 out of 10 and I feel like I've got a screwdriver stuck in my butt, maybe that's not the time to bring in the psychologist. Maybe.
Fair enough. And let's agree, ER visits are
nightmares now.
yeah, yeah. ER visits, while we've all done them, are not the best place to be. But I love your point. There is something that can be done. So, Toby, what would you look for?
One thing, so I was kind of picking up a bit, I think, on what both Amy and Virginia have said. If the one thing is that if the healthcare provider could validate that person's experience, could not tell them to see a psychologist when in their worst point of their flare-up, could direct them towards some understanding about what it is that they're seeking, because they're going, you know, that merry-go-round they're on is seeking an answer to my pain problem, and so that the one thing that they could do is to help them have a conversation about what it is that they're exactly clarifying what it is they're looking for, and clarifying for them where they're likely to find the answers to that. And it's probably not in another physio, another injection, another, you know what, it's somewhere else. So it's helping them to start framing the pain differently. I think that would be, and that's not a 5-second conversation. I'm very conscious of that, but it's as a starting point, that would be it.
Oh, this is beautiful. So far, we've got belief and validation. We've got provide help because you actually can help. I love that, Toby. It helps them understand what they're looking for and help them reframe what their pain is. And now, Bonnie, we will close this out, Bonnie, with you.
I'm really struggling, actually. I think we want to we need the healthcare system to ask, what is this person's main concern? Is it, I don't know what's going on? Is it, I'm scared I'm going to lose my job? Is it that my relationship's falling apart and I know I'm using unhelpful ways to deal with that? What is this person's main concern? Because there are lots of assumptions that take my pain away is the person's main concern. But underneath that is usually because I want to be something. The pain is seen as the obstacle. Let's just put that to one side and ask, what is it that is your main concern? Because if we just deal with the pain intensity, we can deal with that by anesthetizing ourselves, but we can't do anything that matters. And what's the point? And that's why so many people have a prescription that they don't use, or they've been given hardcore drugs and they don't like them, but people feel obligated to take them. And I think sometimes that's what I'm seeing in these online groups, where the chatter is like a pity party. It's I've never been asked what really matters. What is my main concern? You know, if I think that it's cancer, well, I'm going to be really distressed, aren't I? If I think I'm doing more damage, well, you know, and I don't know that we ask people that very often. We don't hear it is being said often loud and clear. It's just that we don't hear that. We just, health professionals tend to see this, well, you've got pain. If I take that away, you'll go back to normal.
Right.
But we can't take pain away all the time. And even if we did, that person's lived through an experience that is going to change their view of themselves, their vulnerability, their life, and what matters. And that's never the same.
I would like to tag on to that for those listening that are in pain. I know we just addressed the healthcare providers and what we would ask of them, but I have listened to Bronnie for multiple years now, and that is a recurring theme in everything that she talks about. But why do you want the pain gone? Like, sure, it sucks, but why do you want it gone? And I had a very intense head pressure situation that was keeping me from working and talking and, you know, some general things. And I decided, I'm scared of the ER. I still have some PTSD. I'm working on it. But I decided I would go to prompt care, and I had Bronnie in my head saying, tell them why you need the pain gone. Like, just tell them. They're never going to ask you, so just tell them. And so when I went in, I said, look, I am in so much distress because of this head pain. I cannot function. I cannot go to work, and I cannot manage it on myself, and I need your help. There was no conversation. They gave me an immediate injection of anti-inflammatories. Like, I did not feel like a drug seeker like I had in the past going in to situations like that with pain. But because I told them what I needed and why I needed it, I really, truly think that that changed my outcome as a patient. You know, and then it probably helped when they said, well, how long has the headache been going on? And I was like, oh, I don't know, like 3-4 months. And they were like, why didn't you come sooner? And I was like, that's a much longer story.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The
Do
thing
you
that
think it
strikes
changed?
me- Sorry,
Anthony,
go
do you think it changed how they looked at you when you told them,
Yes.
I can't go to work? Yeah, so it was both things. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it was both things, saying I need help, I cannot manage this on my own, and here's why I need this gone.
I was just going to say exactly that there's a power shift there when you say you're taking control really of what you're wanting from the encounter, rather than the imbalance, which is often that you will get what I tell you you need, which puts a lot of pressure on the clinician.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
very hard, and
Yeah.
especially if you've only got a limited repertoire of tools and your knowledge of pain isn't that great. So I'm pleased to say, we have changed our University of Otago undergrad medical curriculum. It now has pain all the way through. I am so pleased to be part of that team. You know,
Congratulations.
we knew that it needed to be in there, and so thanks to Ben Darlow and team, we've been able to get that, and it's been approved.
Nice.
But that's new doctors. We've
Right.
got a generation of others,
Yeah.
and you know, every health professional doesn't get sufficient training and understanding of pain, and then many of them just step into pain management without having furthered their knowledge. That worries me. Just as informed as we need to be as people who live with pain, our professionals also need to get up to date with pain knowledge, and not just do a weekend workshop and think that's
Right.
sufficient.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll get off that little soapbox now.
I love those answers. And I think they were all amazing. And what I sort of bring it back to, and you know, I really like what you said, Toby, is just helping people understand, like, what are they seeking? Is I think, and now I have to speak from personal experience. Sometimes you don't know what you're seeking, but your focus is only that thing called pain. And you're like, well, the thing, it hurts. So if that didn't hurt anymore, my life would be great. But if you ask me what your life is, I can't go to work. I can't do the things. I can't be the person I thought I was going to be. All of that stuff. Here's where the psychologists really get to come in and go, let me help you with that outside of this acute flare-up. But I think that is the barrier. Everything that you guys have all said, those are the barriers to allowing people to get to that point of whatever we want, living their life with pain supported self-management, whatever, until they can, for me, it was until I could start making sense of what was nonsensical, I couldn't help myself, because I was on that merry-go-round. I was going around and around and around, looking for somebody to jump on and say, here's what your solution is. So I loved all of those answers, and I think they really speak to what is this complicated, hairy mess of what living with pain is, but how you can start to pull sense out of this oddness and then move forward. So cool. Thank you. That was amazing.
So guys, listen, we got about 15 minutes left. So I think it might be useful to bring things to a conclusion. So listen, we've spoken a lot about stuff tonight, way more than what I ever thought. I mean, I've made some notes, support yourself. What is support yourself management? Where that come from? Do we go into schools and teach stuff there? We talked about catastrophizing, the group stuff, and the stuff that Toby's doing down in Australia. Having people with lived experience or living experience. I prefer the term living experience because I'm still alive. When people say living experience, I'm thinking, oh, crap, hang on a minute, I'll just check. I'm sorry, and support groups, etc., and stuff like that. So we can just sort of go round, what the minutes we got left is sort of, just sort of wrap it up. What's your take on this first conversation?
Who's going to lead us off?
On people, so I'll someone volunteer.
Yeah, let me go. I think what's really brought this to my front of mind is firstly just how difficult conceptually this is, and that's somebody's been in the field for 25 years, but just again reminding ourselves that it is not something we as educators do very well for society. We are terrible at. Do we think that that our communities are better informed about pain now than they were 30 years ago? They're not. Everyone's still living in the same kind of, anyway, we know that. So that has been done very badly. What's brought to front of mind for me is that pain management programs, we've all kind of endorsed the fact that learning from each other is such a critical part of progress. We've had pain management programs running all around the world for 30, 40 years, and they haven't done that. They haven't harnessed that group element terribly well, I think. And I've done my fair share of it, but they've been much more sort of didactic. And as Bronnie says, the good stuff when the morning tea break when people get to talk together. So we haven't done that very well. The sort of online support stuff has been around for a long time, but I also agree that I've tended to not suggest people go there because they are kind of nasty places where people are it's doctor bashing, it's all doom and gloom and nothing ever works. It's terrible. So we haven't done that very well. This is the time to make some changes, people.
I love it.
But we've got a bit of a sense of what needs to happen, and it's sort of bringing all of these things together. So we're not dichotomizing. There's pain programs. It's actually harnessing this stuff, and setting it on a platform and it's just repetition as much as anything else. Is that pain is not all the same, and it does require a flexibility of thought, and it is making sense of the nonsensical, as Keith said. That I've had 50 million injuries as a kid, and they all went away. And this one was nowhere near as bad as the time I jumped my skateboard through the brick wall, and this one hasn't gone away. That makes no sense. All that sort of stuff. Yeah, we've got to do better as a society at getting that message out, and then harnessing what we've got, and then there's real traction. It's that's sort of would be the end game, wouldn't it? That there's just people just get on with living well, and they touch base as they need to. They have places to go that support them as they need to, but it's not the life upending thing that it is for so many people still.
Thanks, Todd.
Brilliant.
Who would like to go next?
I'll go next. I'm going to disagree with you, Toby. I think we're doing some things well. I do. I think first thing, I think there's online supports. I run support groups. If you have well-trained facilitators, you're not doctor bashing, or you're not running a good group. You need to go out there and I harness what is running well, and how do people who are living in pain find that what's running well, what self-management is. What they say, going to Dr. Google, what you don't want to be doing that. So I think there are good things out there. I think it's finding the good knowledge, the good people, the support that's out there, and really finding it. And and when we found from today, it encompasses so much, and hopefully our healthcare providers will help giving people some direction.
Okay. Thanks, Virginia.
I'll go. I always try to come at these discussions from that dual-minded, the person experiencing pain and the person trying to help people in pain. And I am hoping those of you listening that are experiencing pain have seen the frustration amongst providers, that we hear you, we know that this is very real for you, and that we don't come with simple solutions either. I think you see that as we don't even like the terms that we're supposed to use, and so if you gather nothing from today, please just know that there are providers out there that care very, very deeply for your well-being. And that when you hear us say things like self-management with support, or, self-care, that we don't have better words. So if you're listening and you have a better word, please, for the love of God, put it in the comments. We will use it. But until then, this is the language that we have. And we hope that you've heard there is life beyond this sensation that you are experiencing that has stolen you and your life and the things that you love, and it doesn't have to be that way. And that there are things that you can do beyond the healthcare system, no matter what country you're in, that can help you.
Thanks, Amy. Well, it was only you and Keith left, Ronnie.
Go ahead, Bronnie.
I want to talk to health professionals, clinicians who are watching this, knowing that as you've heard us all talk, we have different perspectives, different priorities, and we all say how complex it is. That means that there's no simple recipe. And at each person, it's their life that we're talking about. This is not a pill that you take. This is a lifestyle. And as an individual, I don't want to be boxed into a lifestyle that somebody else has designed for me and thinks that that's what I want. I would rather be given a range of tools and opportunities to try them out and experiment with them so I can see how they fit. And as both Amy and Virginia were saying, that how do you take this theory that a health professional gives and do it in daily life? Maybe that's my occupational therapy heart, but actually that's what makes life life. And so as a clinician, listen to what life it is that the person with pain is wanting, and help them get their life. Not, if they like to boom and bust and that works for them, don't, for goodness sake, tell them that they should change and they'll use 5-minute, turnovers. And pacing is fabulous, but there are times when you cannot use them. You can't use pacing when it's Christmas Day and you're running around like a headless chook trying to feed the family. You can't. You'll flake out the next day, and that is perfectly okay. So as health professionals, if somebody decides they don't want what you are offering them, don't take it personally. It's just not fitting. It's not fitting now, but it might later. And maybe that's the nature of the fact that we're individuals and we have our own lives that we want to live. That'll do.
Very nice.
Last but not
So yeah, so first of all, I just, I have a deep respect for the healthcare system overall, and I have used it extensively. I was just at the hospital before this for 6 hours going through a diagnostic test, and I didn't walk out and have to pay a bill. So yay us. But I'm very appreciative of the healthcare system. My goal, I believe, what I would like to see, you got to have the big hairy idea or the massive change, is system change. My focus is, and it's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, or maybe it will. But everything that we've talked about, I believe, will lead us towards system change. When I say system change, I mean healthcare system change, away from it's engineered as one of institutionality. People, you fit into this box and you see this doctor or that clinician and they do the thing and they do all that. I want to move that system. I want to re-engineer it from that to one of humanity, where we treat people. We don't treat conditions. We treat people that live with pain. We treat people that live with diabetes. We treat people that live with mitochondrial disease. We're treating human beings that are in their environment, living their lives every day, doing the best they can, and are just trying to get by. And sometimes they need a little bit of help. And that help might not necessarily mean to be cut open or another needle in their back. It might need to be, what are you trying to, what is it that is stopping you from doing? What do you want to do? Why are you, how does it make you feel? I think when we can have a system that supports that, that allows more people to be able to take back some of that agency and say, this is what I can do to help myself to live better. I just happen to live with pain, or, we're talking about pain, but it's any other long-term illness, but I can live better with my pain. So until we have a system change that wants to fix it, and it's okay to say, look, I can't fix it for you, but here's what I can do for you. Open up all these other doors and say, this is what we can do for you, because we're going to treat you as the human being you are.
Well, thanks, Keith. And for me, I just want to say a few closing words myself. Really, I've enjoyed tonight, and I think there's lots of messages there, and it's fun enough listening to everybody, and I've been sort of reminiscing a little bit. So on the program that I was on when Toby was working down at Input in London, I want to suppose my closing message to people watching today or listening is that self-management works. You've got to work at it though, and what that program gave me, I always say to people when I describe, when I do talks, etc. What the Input Pain Management program, it gave me hope. I think the very first day when Charles Byther, we went around a group, and I think we had to say how many years we've had pain, and I think for memory, I think there was I don't know how many people in the group, so it was about 18 or something. I felt like loads anyway. No, it might, I don't know, maybe less. I know it's several hundred years, but Charles Byther, he said to the elder group, "We believe you. We believe your pain," and that to me was like, I'm home. So I've got a chance here. That people here understand, and what the program gave me was not only the tools and skills, but the confidence to manage my pain myself. And little was I to know all those skills that I learned from them 2 weeks were lifelong skills. And as I've gone through life, become an older person, and you start, as you guys will find out when you get older, you start collecting other things, like other health skills. And so it's all those skills. When I start getting arthritis in my body, had all been transferable skills for me to manage that. And when I got diagnosed with prostate cancer again, I could tap into those skills to help me manage cancer, etc. So I think I always encourage people to learn about supportive self-management. It ain't no accident in the pain toolkit that the two of the tools are dedicated to teamwork. As I recognise, before I got back pain, I was also in I was in an organisation where I had to learn how to get healthy, etc. With me brain and whatnot, and stop doing what I was doing. And I won't go into much detail. That sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? But it was a 12-step program, and that program gave me a foundation. Self-management gave me that foundation, or pain management gave me that foundation to build on, to get through life, etc. So but the thing is, you've got it's not like dear Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've read your book, and there's so many muscles. It's something we've got to do. It's a doing thing, And for me, it's learning supported self-management is a bridge to normal living, whatever normal living that may be like, you know. So, and also people, if I can do it, you can do it. And the guys on here tonight, you know, Amy and all the others, Keith and well, everyone here. So I don't know if you've got pain, so you're probably getting older now, mate. You're going in the club, but you know, it works like, you know, and we've all got something in common. Hey, listen, that's enough of me. I'm going to wind things up, but listen, this is the first time. Hopefully, this will be. I don't know about you guys. I mean, should we do another one of these or a few of these? I mean, I think they're useful.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. This is enjoyable.
yeah,
Yeah.
and for those watching and all that, send us some. You know, what do you actually want us to talk about? You know, because we got all this expertise here and that teamwork part of it, because we got, you know, that's why we're people with pain on the conversation as well as healthcare professionals, because we can't do, you know, we've that yin and yang really. We can't do it without each other, you know. So we've got it's about teamwork. Tools 2 and 11 in the Pain Toolkit. Check them out. It's about teamwork, you know, building support team, then working with your support team. You know, look, I haven't really met anybody yet who's living with persistent pain, and they've done it on their own. They've had to dip in somewhere to get that. So, but massive thanks to you guys. Thanks, Kate, for being co-facilitator tonight. I think you've done a fantastic job there, dude.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Can I give us a quick plug before me and Keith? We're working on another toolkit called a prehab toolkit. Some of you had some input on it, and we're still working on it. And as things are, we're rejigging things, like, because other things are happening. We think, you know, we need to do this and check that around. So, but just be patient.
Yeah.
Anyway, massive thank you to everybody being involved tonight, and those watching or listening. They'll go. I'll put it on the Toolkit site and promote it. Post the link, recording on social media, and if you're a listener, I'll put it on the audio SoundCloud. Okay, so thanks everybody for taking part, and for wherever you are in the world watching this. I hope you got something from it, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Guys. Hey.